And think about China and other nations like that, where the most astonishing urbanization is taking place, driven by another of the most important drivers of the future, which is demographics. 1 billion children alive today are going to affect the housing market in Australia. How is that? 1 billion children in the rest of the world will affect your housing market here. Why? Because of these connections. 300 million people will move from rural areas into cities in China alone in the next 9 to 10 years. How will it affect your market? This is how. As they move into cities, and as their incomes increase and they become the new emerging middle class, they consume stuff, fortunately from you, from Australia. 20% of all of your exports, as you know, go to supplying this great urbanization, mega construction and infrastructural dream in China right now. And the Chinese move to cities has only just begun. Look at this. This line here is America's urbanization from 0% to 100%. So you can see that most people in 2011 are now living in cities compared to 1840. And as we go along this line, we see a process of delayed and then accelerating of China. And you can see that where we are today is still only about half the level of urbanization as we see in America. So this story has got a long way to go in China. And as this urbanization continues, we see the price of commodities rising. So that's very good news, in theory, if you are exporting steel, coal, etc., going north. And 260 million tons of your earth are going out to China. I find it extraordinary that literally square kilometers of your land is being dug up and put in great big, huge ships and taken to China, where it's cheaper for them to turn it into steel than for you to turn it into steel yourselves in your own land. Extraordinary. 256 billion in Australian commodity exports every single year. Around 80 billion of trade between you and China, this incredibly important market. But even if China's economy cools down, my friends, there are plenty of other heating up economies to keep your demand going. Because China, as you know, is only actually taking about 20% of your exports right now. Here's another graph I find really interesting. 160,000 new babies born every single year in Australia, which is your birth rate is, I think, significantly higher than ours in the UK. But what I find interesting, this is 1997 through to 2010, zero axis. And we've got here in red the building approvals, roughly constant, and in blue the population growth. Now, this year here, there's a gap. Does anybody know why that is? Yeah, immigration fell, and more people decided to disappear from Australia to go and find a better job or something. So there was a dip. But you can be sure it'll be back. So what we've got is this demographic gap here in terms of housing. And that is a pressure cooker. It's there for the eyes to see. We can debate about what it means for house prices, but it's a physical fact. And we've got another physical fact as well, which is as people live longer, and they live as single people, as people delay getting married, as many marriages split up, we have an increase in the number of households required, which isn't even represented here. So these are healthy fundamentals for the housing market. And at the same time, we could see a change in immigration policy into Australia. Who knows? We may not, depending on which way politics goes. I find this an interesting graph. This here is children, numbers of children. These are male children and adults going up to the age of 85. And on this side, we have female children, 10 to 14, 15 to 19, 20 to 24, going up to 85. There are several things that are really important about this graph. The first is that we have a bulge in the middle. So we have a large number of 20 to 24 to 34-year-olds who are going to come through the housing process. Living at home, they're going to get tired of living in their shared flats, and they're going to want their own properties. This is an absolute fact. The second is that many of this bulge are going to push up here and they're not going to die like their parents did. We'll come back to that. They're going to carry on living until they're 84, 94, 104. And they will create their own real estate requirements of different kinds than we've seen in the past. Okay, there's something else too that's very interesting. Is the male famine. If you live, you know this of course, but I mean, if you're living in London right now, there's a 23 to 1 ratio of women to men. That's if we have 100,000 more men than women in certain age groups in Australia. Why is that? Because the guys, they go around the world, but they're more likely to fall in love, settle down, and they stay where they are. The women are more likely to come back. We've seen this replicated over and over again over the last few years. It was chronicled big time, as you know, in 2008 and measured by ethnographers. Does it matter? Is it significant? Yes, it is. It's funny enough. It's all part of the requirements for housing, the patterns, the way that people live, where they live, who they live with. The aging population, 75% of all US and UK wealth is owned by those over the age of 65, and 65% of them are women. Most people over the age of 65 are women, an even greater proportion over the age of 85 because men don't live very long. Something to do with our testosterone. Actually, these things have political effects too in Europe, and closer to home in places like Japan. And look at this. In Italy, there will be 1 million people over the age of 90 by 2026. Almost all of them will be women, enough of them to change every election. So every election in Italy will be dominated by the votes of very old women. Does it matter? It's interesting. We are living in a changing world. All kinds of things are changing. Actually, it's a new market. Housing opportunities for 90-year-old women. Can we stop the tick-tock of the clock? Actually, we probably can. There are all kinds of animals which don't seem to get old in the normal way.